What's good, everybody? It's your boy DJ Medi Major, man, back again. Episode 38 of Let's Do It Major podcast. Thank you for tuning in once again. As I'm recording this, man, for the first time ever, I'm also recording a simultaneous YouTube video. So that will be up on my YouTube channel, Medi Major. Just search Medi Major to pop up. Um, some reasons behind this. I've been seeing a lot of the bloggers, a lot of the guys doing it. Shout out to guys like Alonzo1219, Recane Swag, All About the UYs. Um, it's all about the U83. A lot of those guys, I don't agree with a lot of anything that they say. A lot of times I see a lot of the negativity, but I respect what they do, and I respect the outlet that they put out. Also, shout out to Mark Rogers TV, man. I like the insight and the input. I think us Canes fans are actually some of his biggest supporters. That's why we get so much time on there. Of all the fan bases I've seen, I know he does a lot of Ohio State stuff. He has a SEC guy coming every once in a while. I think the person that gets clearly the most fanfare and the most respect on that channel easily is the Miami Hurricane fans, and it's something that I think, as a fan base as a whole, something that a lot of us are. We move away from the city. A lot of alums, they take off or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times, this is how they stay connected to their team, and through social media, stuff like that. So, with that being said, DJMediMajor.podbean.com. If you want to hear the audio version of this, it would be a little bit more spruced up, things like that. But for right now, let's get into it, man. What more can I say? You know what I'm saying? I'm. Oh, also shout out college football vids. I think he does some interesting things. I like the statistical breakdowns that he takes. Definitely something that I think more people need to start doing instead of kind of trying to stand back and take credit for something that they may have zero to no actual say so or input on. Um, but I want to start off by saying I saw this coming, but not in this fashion. And I think that's how a lot of people around the college football landscape feel right now. But I want to get started with game day, man. Hey, for everybody who showed up to the game day, salute. You know what I'm saying? Triple, double salute, whatever you want to call it. I from what I've read, if I'm not mistaken, I gotta refer to Twitter real quick. I'm pretty sure that was the highest rated college football uh, game day this year, um, and I think it's for good reason. It's funny when people spend all their time, especially on ESPN, hating on the U, saying we're fraudulent, talking craziness. But then in the same breath, tell us stuff like it's football is better when Miami is good, and it's like y'all need to make up y'all minds. You know what I'm saying? Like which one do you want it to be? Because one you can't in one breath say I hate Miami. I think they're frauds. I think they're this, they're that. They're not good, not real competitors. And then in the next breath say college football is great when Miami is good. It just makes a faulty narrative, and it confuses a lot of people, especially outside of the Miami fan base. People think Miami people are crazy because, you know, like Feinbaum said, we're fraudulent per se. I definitely don't think that at all. I think there's a reason we're this way because we know, there was a reason why Miami was dominant in the 80s, dominant in the early 2000s, because we know what this team is capable of. We know what the kids are capable of, and even decades down the road, you know what I'm saying? You can see, and I'll get into that in a little bit. I think it was one of the highest rating television game broadcasts of the season, and I know why. ESPN pushed this Catholic versus convicts narrative all week long. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about from the commercials to the talking about it, everything. And quite honestly, they need to stop, man. I just sat here and and had a tweet from Demetrius Jackson. Man, this man just went out to uh elementary school. You can't see it on the audio version, but I show it for the YouTube version. This man just went out there with his knee tore up on crutches to go give out Thanksgiving Day turkeys. Are you for real right now? This is the school that y'all sit there and and call convicts. Like the audacity, man. These kids out there in the community, #1 school in the nation as far as community services goes. Braxton Barrett, is about to be a academic All American, a finalist. You know what I'm saying? Like that narrative, you need to stop pushing it. And I'm gonna get into Braxton a little bit, man. But shout out to D-Jax, man. I appreciate everything you're doing. Shout out to everybody you took out there, your teammates, man. If it's all when it's all said and done, man, if this football thing does work out, doesn't work out, whatever the case may be, this guy is someone who I think could run for mayor of a certain portion of Miami, man. The kid, his give back is incredible, and I think it's something that needs to be overstated. And we need to stop, pushing this narrative and this idea that we're convicts or we're getting in trouble. UF and FSU lead us by a pretty decent margin. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not even gonna get started on Notre Dame. Also, shout out Peter Reeves, man. He's the one who got me started on the podcast in general. Just hearing it and for those who haven't heard it yet to this point, I do live hip hop mixes as well. Every other episode, so one episode will be a discussion, the next will be a hip hop mix. Unless it's something I just really got to talk about, then I might skip one. Depending, I try to do one on a pretty weekly basis. We get more consistent, more time to kind of do those things. So this is what I do, man. So thank you for listening. Shout out to everybody who's listening. I just got over 1,000 spins on Podbean, and search it. Let's Do a Major Podcast on iTunes, Podbean, and Stitcher. And I appreciate the support, man. But Peter Rees had D Money on there, man. And if y'all don't know who Peter Rees is, he runs Canes Insight. He's a special contributor to the Miami Herald. Really plugged in with the team. Kind of one of the first guys to break a lot of stuff that as it comes out. Really plugged in with recruiting, things like that. He had D Money, who's one of the more insightful and kind of inspiring posters on Cane Insight. If y'all are on Cane Insight and you weren't listening, I'm Medi Scheme, so METISKEEMZ. I know a lot of y'all kind of rock with me on there too. And he brought this man on here, man, and 2 weeks in a row. I don't know if the guys listen to the podcast, but they're inspired. They understand. They listening. They feel the buzz in South Florida and in the city, and they're grasping onto it, and they understand the legacy. People weren't coming for myriads of reasons. I get it, and every fan base in the country wanted to knock us for it, and that's understandable. Some people are using pictures from 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm not expecting a sold out 12 o'clock p.m. game for Virginia. You know what I'm saying? The guys who were just barely holding on to try to possibly compete for the Coastal. That's wrapped up. You know what I'm saying? Like Miami could lose the next 2 games and still win the Coastal. You know what I'm saying? God forbid they don't. But yes, that was me knocking on wood for the audio listeners. But I definitely believe, what I shadow of a doubt that they understand what's at stake. And then having guys like Ed Reed, Warren Sapp, Michael Irvin coming up and basically telling you have to uphold the legacy. I think that's something that can't be understated. There's no school in America, and the broadcaster said everybody, that has that type of fan base. And that type of alumni who comes back and is actively engaged, even when people in their own city is hating on the media. You know what I'm saying? People saying, "Oh, they're not gonna win. They don't stand a chance." It's inspiring to see an NFL legend, a future Hall of Famer in the NFL, and Hall of Famers now come and tell you, "Hey, guess what? This is the you. This is the legacy you have to uphold." And I think that's super important. I think people that can't be understated. You know what I'm saying? So definitely shout out to him for that. Speaking of media, they're literally the worst thing in sports right now, and they're public enemy #1 and who to blame for Notre Dame and this downfall. The thing you have to understand about media, and I guess me doing this is technically considered media But the thing you have to understand is that a lot of times the media will sell you a false narrative or a narrative that they want you to believe. And sometimes they have all the statistics and things to prove it, but they don't delve in deep enough. Excuse me. A lot of times they just look at the surface level and don't look at what's deep underneath. I didn't need to tell you that Miami could possibly dominate this team up front, and there's a reason why. Because if you really look and delve deep into and look and match with the athletes, the guys who they played, the teams that Notre Dame is seeing, and all the narrative from the media was they dominate people up front. They move people off the ball. Now, there's a bunch of NFL GMs who are at that Miami game who are looking at McGlinchey and the other kid, Quentin Knowles, I think his name was. They're looking at them like, it's interesting. And granted, you can't make a sample size off of one game, but when you have a true freshman, Jonathan Garvin, literally a kid who was in high school a few months ago, graduating high school, literally just running past a guy many analysts are claiming is a potential first round draft pick. That can't be understated. You can't sit there and say, you know what? And I know you shouldn't, measure a person's ability by one sample size, but for the way they lost that game and for the narrative that the media has pushed, that's something that kind of opens your eyes. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they said there were 13 NFL scouts at that game this weekend. 13 NFL scouts. And you have some draft eligible kids on there, and it's safe to say Miami had a couple of kids who had their draft stock raised, especially the seniors. Braxton Berrios, people have already been saying it. Braxton Berrios is going to be the next great slot receiver for Bill Belichick in New England. I mean, they say it's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, they said the same thing about Christian McCaffrey. You know what I'm saying? The same thing about Ryan Switzer. And a lot of guys are kind of buying into the idea and that narrative. And it's becoming a new standard in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see. Definitely see. But media needs to chill. Because when you do that, you end up putting yourselves in a position like Paul Feinbaum was in roughly about an hour ago, almost 2 hours ago, on ESPN, having us bite his tongue and swallow his words and get humble. Kendrick Lamar status because of the garbage he was talking about Miami. Low key, that was racist what he said about, Miami is a black mark in college football. Some of y'all may not have picked up on that, but I did. I know where that's heading. I know that narrative of Catholic versus convicts and thugs and what that word's supposed to replace. I'm not going to get into that today. But, I mean, hey, I'd rather laugh with the sinners and cry with the saints. Big facts. Next part. Let's see. The Notre Dame defensive coordinator, Lord have mercy. Man, I was hoping and praying. I said, please, someone get this to this guy. Get this to my guys, man. They need to hear this. This man went in on the turnover chain and Miami. He's effing sick of it. You know what I'm saying? All that. And it's like, cool. We'll raise you 4 turnover chains. I mean, I can get why he's like that. I think he used to be Wake Forest's former defensive coordinator. If I'm not mistaken, under Al Golden, I'm pretty sure. Miami throttled Wake Forest. It wasn't even debatable. And that wasn't even good coaching. That was just Miami players being Miami players. We all know this, So, I mean, it really is what it is at this point. Their coordinator took the wrong step to even remotely getting into. All you did was made them. One thing I gotta make clear that you don't do to Miami kids. You don't talk garbage about them, especially when they have a chip on their shoulder and everybody else hates them. You don't talk garbage about them. You don't let it get back to them. You do it on your sideline. You do it in your locker room, and you hope the footage never comes out. But to have that footage come out and them get their eyes on it, oh Lord have mercy. It was a long night for Brandon Wimbush. They already had a chip on the shoulder because what he said last week. He said, I expected a much more dominating performance. Well, Brandon Wimbush, sure, you got one. You got one, and it wasn't from your sideline. Sorry. Let's talk about some pros and cons, man. Hey, first things first, man. The pass rush and the the run stopping was incredible, incredible. They still, in my estimation, still had way too many rushing yards, but to hold a team to what I think it was like 108, 106 off the top of my head. Um, especially with one of the more terrible run defenses according to the media in the country. You guys got to understand something, man. Manny Diaz is a defensive mastermind. He's a genius, and there are going to be a bunch of people driving yachts with large sums of money in the back of it up to his house in the off season. I promise you. You can't have a guy like that put on two defensive performances like that on two primetime games 2 weeks in a row and not have anybody trying to come. They're going to be throwing everything at this man. I think the Miami native in him will hold off, but I think there's only a matter of time. Mark Richt needs to do whatever it is he needs to do to keep this staff assembled. Because if you told me a couple years ago that this staff would be at this point in this part of the season, I would have told you you're on drugs. I would have probably fought you for trolling. I would have tried to square up with you. Dead ass. It's that crucial. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a turnaround in college football like this to this extent. I've never seen a team do the exact opposite of what Al Golden told his team a couple years ago when he told them to not rise to the occasion and fall back on their training. Easily one of the stupidest things I've ever heard a head coach in any aspect of football tell his kids. How do you tell someone not to rise to the occasion? Explain that to me, please. I don't know, but um, these kids understand that, and that's what they do. They rise to the occasion now, and it's something that when everything is down and everybody doubts them, it's worse. And I think a lot of it was, how do a couple years ago it was, they really did succumb to the pressure when they had started having some signs of life and some signs of actual uh, you know sometimes of like a spark or a pulse. It'd be some team that come in and humble them, and I think you saw glimpses of that. And I think honestly, prior to this 14-game winning streak, I think you saw a lot of that last season. They lost their first game to Florida State, another heartbreaker, the block at the Rock, as they like to affectionately call it. And then you saw this team go for Al Golden. Mark Richt and his coaching staff was the reason why this current win streak is in effect, because that is the point every year for the past couple years under Al Golden, where Miami, it's like their battleship was sunk, and then you see them like just succumb to the pressure, and then they sink, and then it's like, where did this team? And then you have a 4-loss team, a 5-loss team, 6-loss team in some cases. You know what I'm saying? And it was one of those things, 7-loss team in some cases, and it was one of those things where it's like, man, when is it the tide gonna turn, man? I'm not even gonna sit here in front. I'm a grown man, and I stand behind that. But when I saw Trajan Bandy take that kick to the house, which I'm gonna talk about in a second, I teared up, man. I teared up because it's been so long and it's been so much that this fan base has had to deal with, from the media, from our own fans, from this terrible coaching staff. You know what I'm saying? That it was one of those things that I really, got to a point where I was like, hey, like, this is really, what we've been waiting for. And when I get to him, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But pass rush, run stopping, incredible. Josh Adams, we made him look completely average. We might have ourselves pulled him out of the Heisman conversation. It's 2 weeks in a row. He's failed to do anything. I think right now, Baker Mayfield's starting to become the clear-cut favorite for the Heisman. I think what he's done against subpar defenses, obviously, is making sense to the Heisman voters right now. You had some running back up there in the conversation. Bryce Love, his team is terrible. Saquon Barkley, their team's starting to reel. And then obviously Josh Adams, with their second loss in that fashion, you can't sit there and say, Heisman candidate. I think Baker Mayfield is he still needs a moment. I think his moment, everybody says for the Heisman you need a moment. I think his moment for him is was Ohio State, but I think he needs one more to kind of solidify that. Side note: TCU was ranked way too high and got way too much credit. And fool's gold. I'll just leave it at that. Next thing, man, a running game. Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, man. I think Travis Homer, for the first part, I think watching your brother, your teammate go down is a difficult thing to deal with, and I think it became pretty obvious that he fully got the blessing or grasped that role. He either got the blessing from Mark Richt and Mark Walton, or he just said, "This is my role to take," and he clearly took control of that role against Notre Dame, man. Some of the bursts that this kid was making through the hole. Shout out to that old line, man. They came to play. I think the most talented defensive line we saw all season is Virginia Tech. But then they kind of made me eat my words with their performance against Georgia Tech. But, that's neither here nor there. Travis Homer, he exposed a lot of things along with our defense on that defensive line for Notre Dame. And someone was asking me earlier, someone joked and said Miami hasn't played anybody yet after this game. And as funny as it sounds, I actually kind of have to agree. Like I said, that term "fool's gold" is going to be a term you hear me use a lot. I've argued with people from other fan bases, and it just came to fruition. And I think that they understand now that "fool's gold" is a term that should be used as much as the term eye test is used. I can't stand that goddamn term. Eye test is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. What is an eye test? An eye test is a term used by the committee / ESPN, because I really think they're both one and the same, to justify the teams that they look at as their favorites because they have the biggest fan bases that will draw the most revenue and the most ratings for their networks. I'm not going to get in my conspiracy theory today, but I'll just let you sit on that and think about that. Eye test is a stupid term. DJ Dallas. Man, Mark Richt said it best. We watched him go right in front of our eyes, and Lord have mercy, did we? I'm gonna call it the wild cane. I'm not gonna use the wildcat. That's a term that I call it the wild cane. So when you hear me refer to it as the wild cane, they may call it the wildcat. I'm gonna call it the wild cane. I think it sounds better. I like it better. But the wild cane with DJ Dallas, I can't wait for him to learn how to pass out of that. When he passes out of that, oh my God. Just the way, if you guys watch DJ Dallas in his high school tapes, this kid really did. He like no kidding. Like people think like, oh, was he one of those guys? No, he legit played running back. He played quarterback and running back for them. Like he was a running back, he was a receiver, he was one of those. He was an athlete. He was a ranked athlete coming out of high school, and it was because this kid really had to be everything for his team. His team just had a lot of voids that he filled single-handedly, and to watch them get that. Let me also put a side note out there. Mark Richt is a genius. I know people questioned and had the audacity to talk bad about this coaching staff, and you know who you are. Some of y'all are on camera, on the internet, on Facebook, talking about this coaching staff. Mark Richt is an offensive genius, and Georgia are probably one of the stupidest schools in America for letting that man go. They put him in a position to be a CEO over the last few years when, quite honestly, he's one of the better offensive minds in America. And you can see it, how he's taken a lot of kids that he didn't even recruit and put them in situations and configurations to move the ball effectively. I love them showing the statistic last night about Miami struggling to score in the red zone and Notre Dame being dominant at stopping it, and then Miami goes ahead and scores 2 touchdowns in the red zone. You know what I'm saying? Like that's 3 touchdowns actually. They scored later on with DJ Dallas, but it's one. Was it 4? I think it might have been 4 touchdowns. It's one of those things. Yeah, 4 touchdowns in the red zone. It's one of those things where you can't understate that. Like, and that's where the media sets y'all up for failure. Like, you looking at that as a Notre Dame fan and saying, "Yo, we gonna get a stop here." Nah, fam. There were no deep passes. There was nothing. no bombs and nothing like that. They did a great job playing zone coverage and 15 yards off the ball, and all that did was open up the run game. And Mark Richt realized this. You know what I'm saying? People talking about, oh, yo, the man understands defenses, how to read defenses, and don't ever in your life, you're not a Canes fan if you question this ever again, because this man figured out and game planned perfectly both sides of the ball, offense and defense, for a great uh, team and scheme that he was going to face. He's done it the last 2 weeks and they've been dominant. I heard Chris Felica, alum, aka the Bear on College Game Day, state, he thought, and it was a very interesting point, probably one of the more fair points I've heard all week on TV, that these guys really are probably a little bit more fresher than the rest of their opponents, you know what I'm saying, due to the fact that, yeah, we do have some guys who are banged up, you know what I'm saying. D-Jax was a major blow to our defensive end depth. We also lost Perry, who was a huge blow to our linebacker depth, with already having Gordonier out for the season. And, just watching 21 days off for this team had to be very disheartening, A, but B, probably was a blessing in disguise, because right now, people have said it now. I'm now seeing people starting to buy in and say Miami is the most exciting team in the country to watch right now. And it's the way we're doing it. You thought 28-10 was bad. Well, let me hand you 41-8 on the national stage next week. And now everybody's reeling. And there's still some skeptical people. Booger, you're a fucking moron. Don't talk about college football anymore. You're an SEC homer like Feinbaum. You think the best college football. And a lot of people on this garbage committee think that the best football resides in the SEC. And y'all need to get off of that narrative, because it's not the case anymore. It hasn't been. And the last 2 times the SEC has been dethroned, it's been the ACC. I'm not saying the ACC is the best place for college football at all. I think you need to start paying more attention to the other college conferences around. Not all of them. They don't all deserve it. But you need to start doing a better job instead of just handing everything to the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. Look around. College football is deep. It's 130 teams deep. 130. And then you got your Power 5 schools who just clearly gain more presidents. It's not the SEC and then the Power 4 schools. It's college football and the Power 5 schools. DJ Dallas, fantastic job. As far as defense goes, Jaquan Johnson is better than Derwin James. For anyone who has put him in outside of the idea of Derwin James being a better, you need to have your media credentials revoked. You're terrible. It's Jaquan Johnson, and I believe, and I'm trying my hardest not to be biased about this. I feel like Josh Jackson from Iowa is the best corner in the country. I think Michael Jackson from Miami is not too far behind. I think there are other great corners too who may not play in Power 5 conferences. Don't tell me about Ohio State, because they allowed 51, 55 to a terrible Iowa team who had no offense that next week. Don't tell me about nobody in their secondary. They're trash. But as far as Jaquan Johnson goes, I've been watching this kid since he was a freshman at Killian. That kid is a star. That kid is a star. He may be undersized to a lot of people. I don't know what that means anymore in college football. But he is head and shoulders above Derwin James. The fact that people have the audacity to compare this man to Sean Taylor is disgusting and disrespectful to that man and his grave and his legacy. That kid is a bum. I watched this man. I watched, was it Brian Burns, another South Florida kid, make Kelly Bryant fumble in the red zone, and watched him, Matthew Thomas, who's a blood trader to South Florida, and somebody else, all completely fail on recovering a fumble, and they were the 3 closest people around the ball. I watched this happen live on TV. Sean Taylor would never let that happen. Don't tell me about Derwin James. He's garbage. He doesn't hold a candle to Jaquan Johnson right now in the season. The audacity. That's honestly disrespectful. This man has 3 picks. I'm sure probably somewhere in the area is around 60 tackles, and he has his team undefeated. He's the heart and soul of that defense, along with Shaq Quarterman and Michael Pickney. The heart and soul. And the idea that you people push this narrative that Derwin James is even remotely, and you know the crazy thing about it, the media is so trash and has so much tie-in, and the NFL follows him so closely, someone is still gonna pick that kid in the first or second round. Someone's still gonna pick him in the first and second round. That's up to your. That's for your NFL team. That's for your fan base to go scream at him and get mad about. Because I don't understand what the comparison is. Terrible. Malik Rozier, man. I think he went 15 for 24, missed 9 passes. Not mind-numbing numbers, not mind-boggling numbers, but I think what it was too is 44 yards rushing on the ground. I think is it was imperative. Accounted for 2 total touchdowns. The pass he threw to Braxton Berrios was gorgeous. If you guys know me, and you can go back and check Cannon's Insight, you go back and check anything I posted on social media. I'm not a N'Kosi Perry guy. I'm not the guy who said N'Kosi Perry should be playing. I'm the guy who believes that having time playing in college is a night and day difference. I'm not someone who buys into just people just showing me something on a highlight and not taking into consideration where they played, the conference, especially in South Florida and Florida. I think you have to take that time to actually look at the competition, who they play, instead of just crowning them and throwing them into the fire. So I'm on record now saying it, and I probably said it in this podcast. So you have to go back and look at my older episodes. I was fully bought into Malik Rozier. And I also understand this. When you're playing against one of the best defenses in the country, when you're playing against a defense who did that to Notre Dame, and people had Brandon Wimbush silently as a Maxwell Award winner, silently as a guy who they said can take a team to victory. When you're practicing against that, I expect you to be garbage. I watched this man. Someone shout out to the dude who periscoped the spring scrimmages. I watched this man, Malik Rozier, throw 3 interceptions to the same guy in one game. That guy was Malik Young. His defensive counterpart, the other number 12. And I think Malik Young is also one of the best. Matter of fact, I don't think. Pro Football Focused. Go check their stats. Malik Young is consistently graded out all season as one of the better cover corners in college football's landscape, along with Michael Jackson. I mean, so you tell me. And before that, even before that, Trajan Bannon was starting to get time, and was grading out. So I mean, realistically, I expect him to do that because when it came down to it, that was the best defense he played. Just like the oldies at the U, you practiced against the best. This is who you practice with on a daily basis. So yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh yeah, they definitely weren't good or whatever the case may be. They were good. And Jaquan Johnson is good, and I think that's the reason why Malik Rozier struggled. But he did a great job this game, the running and the running aspect. I think for a good part of the season, I said this in a previous episode, I think Mark Richt had this kid handcuffed, and I don't think he gave him the opportunity to really take over the offense. I think as we're starting to settle in, as guys starting to find their role, the emergence of guys like Jeff Thomas, Braxton Berrios, I think he's finally getting that time and that shot to be, the guy, and I think that can't be understated, and I think now he's getting more decisive in decisions in the pocket. I heard him in the post-game interview say that he read a zero blitz, they checked down, they audibled, and he knew that they were going to come zero. So what he did, he audibled to another run instead of throwing in the pressure and possibly turning the ball over. And that's the part that I don't think he ever had a chance to do in the beginning part of this season. I think Brad Kaya was kind of given that opportunity because Brad Kaya couldn't run. So if Brad Kaya read pressure, he had to say, oh shit, audible to something quick, audible to a screen pass, audible to something, because they're going to stack the box and make me beat them with my arm. And I think Malik Rozier adds a different aspect with his mobility. And that's why I was fully in, because I don't think N'Kosi Perry can see that right now. I think he's learning it. He's watching it firsthand. Is watching Malik Rozier do what he does. Also, shameless plug, my man is 10-0 as a starter. So I'm not going to sit here and act like that's not a thing, because it absolutely is. I had a funny video I just recorded of me listening to Feinbaum and the young lady that's on there, Rutledge, I think her name is, saying that there's not a better quarterback who can win you a game better than Baker Mayfield. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm pretty sure this dude has lost 2 or 3 games in the last 2 seasons. Excuse me if my stat is wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Iowa State this year, Ohio State last year, and then another team he should have beaten in the Big 12. So, um, is that kid going to be good in the NFL? I really think so. And side note, I really hope the Giants are going to pick this kid up. I think he would. I think he would be an asset to our team, especially with his mobility and if not him, Lamar Jackson. But for the love of God, please do not pick up Sam Darnold, and do not pick up the kid Josh Rosen. Those kids are 2 head cases. I think they're going to be terrible in the NFL, and I really don't want to see them ruin my NFL franchise. So, Braxton Berrios, ladies and gentlemen, that kid is for someone who is primarily raised in North Carolina. That kid is as much as a can as Ed Reed, who's from Louisiana. He's as much as a can as Sean Taylor, who's from Miami. He's as much as a can as any other great. John Vilma, John Beeson, Duke Johnson. Braxton Berrios is as much as a can as any one of those individuals. Do you understand that this man was underutilized by 2 coaching staffs in the last 3 years? 2 of them. I know he had a couple injuries when he first came out of high school, and I, as a high-rated 4-star, I said, I don't know if he's gonna pan out. And that kid shut me up. That kid is all can. You cut his arm, orange and green blood is gonna flow out of this kid. I've never seen someone put on for a school as much as he has, probably since Duke Johnson. And it's something that I can't understate, and I'm so proud to have that kid. And that's pretty much the gist with that. Great catch, fantastic catch, and I'm telling you that this kid, he won't go any later than the 4th round. If Miami goes undefeated, and he ends up being the Hunter Renfrow to Miami, which I think he's better than Hunter Renfrow, quite honestly. No disrespect to Hunter Renfrow, he did a great thing, and he dethroned Alabama, which is fantastic. But I just think he's a better receiver than him. If he goes on to do that, this kid doesn't go any further than the 4th round. There's no way that 13 scouts came out to a game like yesterday and didn't watch this kid in that back shoulder fade he caught over that DB in the corner. Not yesterday, Saturday, excuse me. The turnover chain is the scariest thing in college football. I'll say it again. The turnover chain is the scariest thing in college football. It's got everybody's attention, positive and negative. It's pissing people off. Teams are going out of their way. I think it's been one time this year, once this year, that it hasn't come out. And I got another statistic for you. I just saw this morning. In the last 4 games, Miami has forced 16 turnovers. That's more than 72 FBS teams have forced all season. 72 college football teams in the, not the FCS, the FBS, don't have 16 turnovers yet this year. Miami has 16 in the last 4 games. Has this made an impact? Yes. The only team I think Miami has not had the turnover chain come out against was Georgia Tech. And quite honestly, I think it was more because that's when we first lost D. Delaney at corner, and we first lost Sheldrick Redwine to the concussion. But that dude is absolutely a leader. I'm also, along with Jaquan Johnson, man, those two are conjoined at the hip. That guy, is a huge deal, but he's also opened the door. Robert Knowles was terrible in that Georgia Tech game. If I didn't say something about it before, I'm pretty sure I did. I'll go ahead and reiterate it. He was horrible, and he got passed by 2 freshmen. Derek Smith and Amari Carter have passed him on that depth chart. Let me make something very clear. If any recruits are listening, freshmen play here in a big role, in a huge role, and that takes me to my next point, man. Let me tell you something about this kid, Trajan Bandy. When I first heard Peter Rees talk about him, I saw it in The Work. If you guys are familiar with this site, it's usually recruiting little nuggets, tidbits that he gets. He's pretty exclusive with it. He's pretty nice with it. He usually gets some very good information that usually ends up turning out to be true. Um, when I saw this man on The Work, Peter Reed said, quote, "This kid is a dog." Then I heard him say it and reiterate it again that this kid is a dog on the podcast. And I see exactly what he means. This kid is a true freshman. Now, let me make something very clear as well. In the beginning of the season, the first quarter, I would say maybe the first 4 to 5 games, Trajan Bandy on the field, we, as a fan base, were getting pissed off because we saw a lot of base 4-3 sets where the corners, where the linebackers were covering slot corners. For one, I think, considering how some of those games turned out, all victories, I think you're in no position to question that. But I also think it was Manny Diaz's genius of giving those guys time to emerge. We saw the same thing last year when we had 3 linebackers who were all true freshmen, and Pinckney, McLeod, and Shaq Q, doing the same thing. We were all freaking out. And then we saw what at the end of the year? The emergence of Zach McLeod. They gave him more responsibility, gave him more opportunities, and then he ended up emerging as a great player. I think he's regressed a lot this season. I think his tackling angles are piss poor, and I hope he turns it up before we face Clemson. I hope he turns it up this weekend because there was a lot of plays that if he made there and got there, there are more stops on 3rd down and 4th down. But we saw that emergence, we saw that growth, and I think this is what happened with Trajan Bandy. I think Trajan Bandy's dog came out in practice. I thought Manny Diaz locked onto it and realized what the situation was, and I think he approached it accordingly. I've probably watched his 66-yard interception, 65, 66-yard, probably more times than most people would consider healthy, but there's a reason why. I don't know if it was the black socks and the black shoes. When I saw him pick that ball off and the way he ran to the end zone, and you may agree with me, you may not, I saw Ed Reed. I almost broke down because I thought for a second he was going to rip his helmet off in the end zone. I literally saw a glimpse of Ed Reed taking his picks back to the house. I don't know if it was he taped his socks up, he taped his shoes up, so he had all black socks, all black shoes. The way he dressed, just watching him run to the end zone, I saw Ed Reed on one of his many, I think he had 5 or 6 at his time at the University of Miami and university records. I saw Ed Reed when this kid picked this ball off and ran it back to the end zone. The term Muddy Badger is very applicable, and it's going to be very evident in the next couple of years. Trajan Bandy, ladies and gentlemen, is here to stay. He's going to be the next great cover corner at the U, especially in the slot. I had goosebumps. Like, I had legit goosebumps when I saw this. I saw this kid, and he ran through the end zone, dropped the ball, and I thought he was going to rip his helmet off, and like my heart skipped a beat for a second. I was like, that at that moment, we already had the game in hand, but I said Miami is back. Now, there's obviously more things to prove. Back for a lot of fan base, and for me in a sense too, is national championships. That's what we do. That's how we do it. Dominant performances like that on a continuing basis. But to think that I think last night, the Miami Hurricanes were a dog on a leash. And I think a lot of things to this point, including the media, was Mark Richt slowly loosening the grip. I think he loosened the grip, but now I think he loosened it a little bit more. I'm not going to jump to the conclusion of saying that he let the leash go, but I think we're getting there. I think we cannot sleep or bypass Virginia. They're also a wounded animal, like I talked about a couple of podcasts ago with North Carolina. People talk about North Carolina being 1-18. They just won their second game, I believe. Either this past weekend or the weekend before. But Virginia is absolutely a wounded dog, a wounded animal. They have something to prove. Pittsburgh is in the same boat. We cannot sleep through these games because I guarantee the media and the committee will take everything into account. Now, the standard's been set. You beat the number 3 team like this on national TV, on the national stage. It's almost like the committee's like, show me what else you have. You now have to beat 2 piss-poor, losing record-having teams decisively. I don't know if Mark Richt can do that. Not because I think it's because we finally opened everything. I think there's still more to be opened up too. I don't think we've seen the end of the wild cane, as I affectionately like to call it. I think there's more to come with that. I think we're gonna actually see DJ throw the ball or attempt to. I think he's just getting started. I think Clemson got a lot to prepare for before December 2nd, and I'm really sitting here fighting the urge to just blow all this money on this game. I really am. Um, Hotels, rental cars, the works. I'm really, I just gotta see how my schedule's looking, but I'm really considering it right now. Some cons, man, and I'll start to wrap this up. One con for me is some of the takeaways. I think, man, I think a statement would have been made on a much grander scale if that ball that Shaq Quarterman tipped off that slipped through Mike Pinkney and Zach McCloud's hands. Zach McCloud should have had that pick. He's the only person I think on that starting 11 that's not a defensive lineman that hasn't had that hasn't donned the turnover chain yet. And I think that should be motivating him. I think his peers should be giving him a little crap about it and making sure that he understands that like, dude, like, you've had opportunities from that one pick against almost pick against West Virginia in the bowl game last year. I think he's had that opportunity there, and I think he's not grasping it. On top of his missed angles, it's just one of those cons for me. He has to this week. He has to step up. I noticed a couple of times in the game last, they actually pulled him out and moved Mike to his side and put D.O. on the other side. I don't know if that was him being hurt or just them having a breakdown or just not wanting to put the game out of reach. But he has to step up, and I think it's starting to get evident to Manny and them that he has to do that. Another person that so every opportunity, Malik had a chance for a pick. The dude did a good job. He kicked the ball out. The receiver, the Notre Dame receiver, actually kicked the ball loose when he had possession of it. Heads up play by him. But this game had an opportunity for him to have 5 interceptions against Brandon Wimbush, and 4 at a minimum, and then 1 against the other kid, Book. I think Ian Book. So that's a thing. Like we gotta take every. You can't give them a chance. Virginia too. Like I said, wounded animal mentality. You have to obliterate them. You have to make sure, and you gotta think too. Quinn Blanding is gonna play very well this weekend. That's a dude who you're not gonna sleep on. Quinn Blanding is a great safety. And he's gonna get drafted. I think he came back for his senior year, and he's having a great senior year. I think he's probably in the conversation as one of the better safeties, along with Jaquan Johnson. But don't talk to me about Derwin James, because he's not. Garbage. With that being said, the hangover effect. This is a huge win, and the Coastal's locked up. And there's teams who just, these teams now, they know we have the Coastal, the trophies in our possession. They presented it yesterday at the team meeting. And these teams have something to say about it. Louisville went and dominated, and Louisville has 0 defense. And they still dominated Virginia in a pretty crazy fashion. Shout out to that boy Lamar Jackson, man. He's a Miami kid. I think he's from Deerfield Beach. I don't know how his recruitment went as far as going, but I was one of the few people who was rooting for him this weekend. I don't like Louisville in any capacity. I hate what they used to do with Charlie Strong. I hate that Teddy Bridgewater did what he did. The throat slash. The last time he was in the Russell Athletic Bowl. I think it's the Camping World or something like that. Whatever. But I'm pissed off about it. There's no love lost between them. I hope UCF drags USF this weekend. But I was rooting for the kid because I knew what the implications were if he won. You know what I'm saying? So I'll leave it at that. My last con, and I'll get ready to wrap this up. Try to keep this under an hour. Ahmmon Richards, man. Before I get on him, shout out to Lawrence Cager. Shout out to you realizing that you're 6'5". That 4th and 9 catch and the slant you caught, fantastic catches. I think Deontay Mullins kind of put things in perspective for him. This team's not going to stop for a distraction. I just read on Facebook a young lady, I forgot her name. Shout out to her. I guess her husband coached Ahmmon Richards in high school, and he talked to him, and he was, kind of sharing his dismay, along from what he did on Twitter. If you haven't heard, he's left the program. And from what I read, her husband told him he need to make things right, and so I hope he's adult enough to do that. I think I follow on Snap, and I saw that he was actually watching his highlights from the Under Armour All American game, and his catch he had, his one handed catch was a fantastic catch for a touchdown against with former Miami enrollee Jack Allison. Great catch, but I think he said something he needs to realize is, man, at Miami, talent comes in waves, and it comes from everywhere, and you can't expect to be you can't expect to just get things handed to you. You have to step up in big situations. Lawrence Cager did that. 4 for 9. You know, people got Langham figured out. Probably not counting in Lawrence Cager, and this kid makes a fantastic grab over Julian Love. And he realized he was 6'5". Like, I could take this from this kid. And shout out to him. Deontay Mullins had a great catch earlier in the year. A sideline bailout throw from Malik Rozier. And that's really what stopped for him. You got to understand, dude. You had a great catch in that game. I think his team still wanted to lose that All-Star game. But no fault of his, obviously. The next year, this kid from East St. Louis comes out and wins MVP, named Jeff Thomas. And he had everybody in the country's jaw dropped and looking like, I want this kid right now. And out of nowhere, because maybe I'm crazy, I didn't think anybody was tracking this kid. No, none of the recruiting gurus, not Peter Ariz, none of the guys on the recruiting discussion on the board, none of the recruiting gurus that I know, no one was tracking this kid. And out of nowhere, he has the top 3 of, I think, Illinois, another big-time school in Miami. And I'm like, Miami? Like, what? And that kid commits to Miami on signing day. Like, that's one of those things where I'm talking about ESPNU, the broadcast, everything. You have to think that this kid came in with a chip on his shoulder and you had to step your game up. You can't be mad because he's not playing you. Like, the kid is a playmaker. Jeff Thomas is for real. You had to step up your play. Now, that caveat to Ahmmon Richards, man, and no one's talked about it, but I'll say it. He's in a sophomore slump. I don't know how serious the injury is, and obviously people understand that he may be more healthy, but they said, we don't care. We're going to double this kid. And for the past 2 weeks, that's what the case has been. They've doubled Ahmmon Richards. They're not going to let him get open, not get loose. They're going to give pressure, and this man's either going to have to throw it up and risk the possibility of it getting picked off, or just find other people as weapons. And that's what I think Malik Rozier has done a fantastic job of doing, is just finding other people as weapons. And that can't be understated or undersold. So Ahmmon Richards, I hope he opens it up, but please expect Quinn Blanding to be shading to your side of the field. And that's opening up for other people. I mean, it's good to be a threat, but you just understand, Braxton Berrios is a senior. It's senior day this next weekend. And he's going to show up and show out. And then, he's going to start preparing for the draft. He has one more game, prepare for this bowl game. Hopefully win the ACC championship, prepare for that, then the bowl game, wherever we get put, if it's the playoff or not. And then you got to understand that after that, like, you're the guy again. Like for your junior season, you have to be the man again. You have to step up because there's receivers coming in behind you, Noodles, Wiggins. Those are guys who they know we let freshmen play here. So you're going to have returning Jeff Thomas, who's going to be, I think, way better than he was this year. A healthy Mike Harley. Plenty of guys, you got to understand that it's time to step up. So let's get it done, And I'll leave it at that, man. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. Once again, shout out to all them guys who are doing it. Alonzo1219, Mark Rogers, Wise All About the U, All About the U83, College Football Vids, Recane Swag. All y'all guys, man, like, I kind of stepped into it, and then I stepped back out, and then I'm stepping back into it now, but I just want to do it in this capacity. So I'm going to do the podcast, obviously. I'm going to record the videos. And shout out to all Canes fans, man. Y'all showed up and showed out, and I cannot thank y'all enough, man. That was incredible. That was incredible. And that's just how it's always been. We win, they come. We lose, they don't. So, I mean, we got to keep this train rolling. The legacy has been set. The U Part 3's coming soon. Shout out to that boy Billy Corbin. It's all about this U, man. King Gang, forever. We good.